Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Respected brothers and sisters, welcome to this week's ICNA ILF Understanding the Quran series. Inshallah, we'll be continuing the study of Surah An-Nisaa, verses 10 to 14. And inshallah, this week's session will be continued by Sheikh Abdul Rahman Khan.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, all assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So it's actually 11 to 14. So last week we did from 1 to 10. And the reason why it's 11 to 14 because this is a whole topic by itself. This is a whole subject matter by itself. What these verses deal with, they deal with laws and regulations of inheritance in details. And this is after 1 to 10 that, and also mentioning about rights of, orphans, of children, of people who are, safi, that may not be, are mentally challenged. So this verse start to give the details of Islamic inheritance, and we will deal with it in a holistic way. And the reason is because it is a whole subject by itself. This subject we would study 3 sessions per week for the whole year, these few ayats. So they go into detail. So obviously, we don't have 3 sessions for a week for a whole year. So we just have 4 to 5 minutes and so forth. So we will have to, I know you'll have a lot of questions, but this will not be the forum for that. So in Sharia, this aspect is called ilmul fara'id, okay, knowledge of inheritance. And that means when you die, you have to die, and then what remains in your wealth has to be distributed. It's a firm command of Allah that is highly neglected. I cannot say that enough. It's highly neglected by many Muslims, and because of that, there is a lot of tension and problems that will come out within the family because it is not addressed. So I urge all of you, and even those who will see this program for long after, I really urge all of you to make sure you have this discussion with your family. Sit together and have this conversation about inheritance, because it is a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once again, Allah is instituting laws how wealth should be disposed of at the time of death and how each relative should inherit. It is not about our decision. It is about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides. Yes, there is a little portion that Allah gives us to make some choices, but other than that, the wealth that when we die and leave are already given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to various relatives. And it is about protecting the rights of relatives. Without this laws of inheritance, how many fights can possibly happen if Allah had not given us the regulation with our rights of our wealth when we pass away? So think of all the laws like that. Think of all the ahkam of Allah. If Allah did not tell us how to make our salah and send the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to show us how to do salah, you can imagine if everybody has his or her own way to do salah, how salah would be. And so inheritance falls under the ahkam or the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that particular way. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ما حق امرئ مسلم له شيء يوصي فيه يبيت ليلتين إلا وصيته مكتوبة عنده. It is not permissible for any Muslim who has something to will, and that will we will come to. This is not the all your wealth. You have some part that you can will to stay for 2 nights without having his last will and testament written and kept ready with him. In other words, prepare for death and prepare for how your wealth is going to be distributed by the hukum of Allah and by the hukum or the laws of Allah, the laws as shown to us by Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Another point to note that as we go through these uh, 4 verses, you will find that there is a lot of information, And think about it this way: the closer the relatives are, they will prevent further relatives from inheriting. Okay, so if you have children, for example, boys and girls, pretty much they take up the bulk of your wealth. Okay, if you have parents, you have brothers, and so forth, you will see how the inheritance will come for them. So the yellow line, okay, the yellow circle rather, the yellow circle is that you are the deceased person. Always think of it. When we were studying this, the professor always used to say, think as yourself as the deceased person. So that line that we see there, this is your going up will be your origin, where you come from, parents, grandparents, parents, mother, father, grandparents, and so forth. The line going down will be your sons and daughters and grandchildren and so forth. This line will be like your brothers and sisters, and you have 3 types of brothers and sisters. For many people, they only have one type, which is from one mother, the same mother and the same father. And for that, we can call them full brother, full sister, sometimes blood brother, blood sister. Or you can have brothers and sisters from the father side alone, or you can have brothers and sisters from the mother side alone, and then their children. Then you go to the uncles and so forth. So you see that line there helps you to guide you along how we are going to explain these following verses. So we start off with the verse 11. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوصيكم الله في أولادكم للذكر مثل حظ الأنثيين فإن كن نساء فوق اثنتين فلهن ثلثا ما ترك وإن كانت واحدة فلها النصف ولأبويه لكل واحد منهما السدس مما ترك إن كان له ولد فإن لم يكن له ولد وورثه أبواه فلأمه الثلث فإن كان له إخوة فلأمه السدس من بعد وصية يوصى بها أو دين آباؤكم وأبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا فريضة من الله إن الله كان عليما حكيما. So now it's quite a few slides we have to go through, so we have to sorry, I had to rush through that. But Allah commands you as regard your children inheritance. So verse 11 is dealing with children and parents. Okay, children and parents here means mother and father, and mother and father will mean your biological mother and your biological father, and children will mean your biological sons and biological daughters. Okay, so to the male, a portion equal to that of 2 females. Okay, so a son gets twice as the amount of share as 2 females. In other words, the daughter gets half as a share of the son. And because the daughter is not financially responsible in her home, and the male is, so that's why he has a double portion to take care of the financial responsibility. And if they're only daughters, 2 or more, their share is 2/3. In other words, you have no son, but you have 2 or more daughters, they will have 2/3 of your wealth. Okay. And if you only have one, her share is half. So you see how it starts to build up now. So if you have Boys and girls, male get twice as much as females. If so, you don't decide that. This is Allah is deciding this now. This is like Salah, how many rakat Fajr has, and Dhuhr and Asr, Maghrib, and Isha. You don't decide how many rakat they have. Allah has decided, and the Prophet ﷺ has given us the clear path as to how many are there. Here, Allah is telling us in details who gets what and what portion. It's not for us, oh, I love this son more, I love that daughter more, they're going to get more wealth. This is after we die. After we die, so you have to die first, and then whatever wealth is left behind, the male children get twice as much as the female children. And if you only have daughters, two or more, they will get two-thirds of your wealth. Okay, they will get two-thirds of your wealth. And if it is one, her share is half, because other people are going to come in for the other half, or other people are going to come in for that one-third that remain if you have two or more daughters. For parents now, a sixth share of inheritance to each. So mother get 1/6 and father get 1/6 if the deceased left children. So if you leave children behind, the mother gets 1/6 and the father gets 1/6. Okay, along with the male or the sons get twice as much as female with the remainder. Okay, if no children and the parents are the only heirs, they're the only inheritors, the mother has a third, which means the remainder goes to the father. Okay, and if the deceased left brothers or sisters, and this is two or more, any two, whether two blood brothers, two half brothers, paternal brothers, maternal brothers, or a combination, whether it's two or more, the mother has 1/6. Again, the father will get the remainder. And here, the brothers and sisters will not get because of the father. The father is closer than brothers and sisters, so the father will get the bulk if you don't have children. Okay, this is if no children. The distribution in all cases after the payment of legacies or will. Now, here's the will that is the ayah is talking about. He may have bequeathed it or debts. You know not which of them, that is, which of your children or parents or whatever it is, whether your parents or children are nearest to you in benefit. These fixed shares are ordained, commanded by Allah, and Allah is all knower, all wise. So you see here, too often we focus on a few things in Islam, few aspects of Islam, and we leave off such great commandment from Allah that He says, you do not know whether your parents are more beneficial or your children are more beneficial for you. These are portions that are fixed by Allah, and Allah is all knower, all wise. So if you can go back later on, because this is just a quick tafsir of these verses. They're not meant to solve your problem. Your problem has to be solved because each case has a number of DNA that has to be taken in consideration. So just tonight's session for 40 to 45 minutes will not make you like scholarly now that you can go and tell people how much they're going to get. Okay, that will that we're talking about is that Allah has given you the ability to will 1/3 of your wealth for non-inheritors. We will come to that, inshallah. So what are some of the portions mentioned here? First, we have children and parents, as we talk about, and Allah is more merciful to our children than ourselves. So here it is the breakdown that He's given us. Sons get twice as daughters, two or more daughters and no sons, two-thirds. This is a hadith based on Sa'd ibn Rabi'. And one daughter and no son, she gets a half of your wealth. And parents, mom and dad, gets 1/6 if the deceased left no children. These are just a summary of verse 11. If no children, mother gets 1/3, and if there are brothers and sisters, she gets 1/6. The distribution is done after your legacy or will may have been created, which is up to one third after funeral expenses and debt repayment. Okay, after that, then these are the wealth you leave and the people who will inherit in this category here. This is verse 11. Verse 12, for saving of time, I will just read, do the translation here. In what in which your wives leave. So, in other words, your wife die. Your share, that is the husband's share, is a half if they have no child. So, a wife dies, a woman dies, her husband gets a half if they have no if she has no children, whether for him or for another husband that she may have divorced or he may have died. So, in other words, she, the woman, did not have any children from her biological children. Again, it could be with this husband, it could be with another husband that may have passed away or divorced. So your share is a half, but if they leave a child, right, you get one fourth. The husband now gets one fourth. So here the wealth is being shifted to the children. Okay, if no child, the husband gets a half, and if there is a child, the husband get one fourth, and that child can mean a daughter or a son, so long as it is one child or more, boy or girl, that the husband will get one fourth of that which they leave after payment of legacies or will that may have bequeathed or debts. Then Allah continues to the wife now. If what you leave, their share, so wives can be, as we talked about in last week, what wives can be one, two, three, four. They share in one fourth. So if you have one wife, they get one fourth. If you have four wives, they all share that one fourth. So not each one will get one fourth, because one fourth multiplied by four is the whole, they get the whole wealth. That's not what it is. So if you have, most people, one wife, so they will get a quarter if you leave no child. If you leave a child, again, your child can be with her, or it could be that you have, you married before, your wife died or divorced, they get one eighth. Okay, the wives get one eighth of that which you leave after payment of legacies or will that you may have bequeathed or debts that you owe. Okay, so always remember the debts are something that has to be repaid, and then the will, which is one third, has to be taken out. Then you can start to share out the remainder. Then here is another category. And if a man or woman leaves neither ascendants or descendants, no father, grandfather, no son or grandson or granddaughters from the son side. Granddaughters from the grandson and granddaughters from the daughter side do not inherit. But from the son side, they will inherit. But has a brother or sister. Now, this brother or sister, all the ulama, they agree, all the fuqaha, they agree that this is referring to only maternal brother and maternal sister, because the last verse in Surah An-Nisaa deals with blood brother and paternal brother, blood brothers and sisters and paternal brothers and sisters. Then each of them would be entitled. So if it is either male or female, they will get not one sixth each, but they each one will be entitled to one sixth. So whether male or female, they will get one sixth. But if they are more than two, in other words, you have two maternal brothers or sisters, or a combination of brothers and sisters, maternal brothers and sisters, they share one third after any bequeath which may be made or debt, as long as there is no detriment caused. This is an ordinance. Again, Allah is mentioning strong words here. That this is the hukum, ordinance from Allah, and Allah is knowing and forbearing. So here in verse 12, it addresses spouses and maternal siblings. Spouses, the husband get a half if wife have no children, and children here could be male or female, or husband gets a quarter if the wife has children after the one third of the will or debt repayment. Wife gets a quarter if the husband has no children, and wife gets 1/8 if the husband has children. After the one third of the will, he wills one third. Now, this is not compulsory for him. This is pure voluntary for any one of us, that we have up to one third if we want. If we don't want to leave anything for anybody else other than our inheritors, we don't have to. Okay, you are not obliged to leave uh, one third of your wealth for anyone. All of your wealth can go to these inheritors. And then it talks about maternal sibling, male or female, get 1/6. And if there's no children or parents, and parents here will be father's father as well too. And if there are two or more maternal siblings, they will get one third uh, after the will of one third or debt repayment. Always remember, this one third of the will is purely optional. This part is optional. Debt repayment has to be done, and these fixed portion that Allah has given has to be taken care. But your will is what Allah has given the ability for us, that we can do sadaqatun jariyah with one third of our wealth. If we don't want to do that and leave all the wealth for our inheritors, no problem. All well and good. Okay. Um, to close off this discussion, we cannot discuss these verse 11 and 12 without discuss verse 176. And again, they ask you for a legal verdict, and because here this the paternal brothers, the full brothers and sisters, and paternal brothers and sisters are going to be discussed in the last verse of Surah An-Nisaa. So I just thought of bringing it so you have the whole picture. They ask you for a legal verdict. Say Allah directs you. Qulillahu yuftikum. Allah is giving this fatwa, so to speak, this ordinance or this direction. Allah directs you about kalala, those who have neither parents nor nor children as heirs. If a man that dies leaving a sister but has no child, she shall have half of the inheritance. And if such a decease was a woman who left no child, her brother takes her inheritance. Remember, she doesn't have father, she doesn't have siblings. She doesn't have children and so forth. Her brother will take um, her brother takes her inheritance. Okay, he will get all. If there are two sisters, they shall have 2/3 of the inheritance. And if they are brothers and sisters, the male will get twice as a share of the female. Thus, Allah does make clear to you His law, lest you go astray, and Allah is all knowing in everything. Now, this sounds like a ton of information, and I'm sure your head is spinning in all direction right now. But this is just a rough translation and understanding. What you need to get out of all of these verses is that you have to find out, and you have to make commitment to carry out these laws of Allah. You cannot say, oh, it's confusing. It's not confusing. Nothing here is confusing. It is just that it's a lot of bits and pieces that will take a whole year with 3 sessions a week for you to master all of that. Okay. So don't make that prevent you, Because for most of you, your case is very simple, very simple. And I'm sure that 90%, if not more, of your cases you will understand at least by the end of this session. So if you have a mother and father, and if you have children, if you have a husband, it's very easy for you to get and to know their shares. But you have to be committed to carry out this law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is way important that people are taking it very lightly, and perhaps, with little or no um, seriousness. So Ibn Abbas, he said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, mentioned قال الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم اقسموا المال بين أهل الفرائض على كتاب الله فما تركت الفرائض فلأولى رجل ذكر. Divide the wealth among the heirs, okay, as prescribed in the shares according to Allah's book. Whatever remain after that is for the male person who is nearest to the deceased. So let me just give you a quick scenario. A person dies, leaving a mom and a dad, and a wife and sons and daughters. So in that case, the wife will get 1/8 because they are children, and the parent, mom and dad, will get 1/6 because they're children, and the remaining of that wealth goes to the children, male twice as much as female. Okay, so because your son is your nearest male relative, and the daughters, they are going together now, they are going to inherit the remaining of the wealth together. So long as they're children, male and female, they will get the remainder of your wealth, with male twice as much as female. Now, verse 13 and 14 are some strong consequences. Allah says, Tilka hududullah. وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا وَذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ وَمَن يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَهُ يُدْخِلْهُ نَارًا خَالِدًا فِيهَا وَلَهُ عَذَابٌ مُهِينٌ. So immediately after verses 11 and 12, here is what Allah is saying. These are the limits set by Allah. Just like Zabiha, just like, what is halal you can do, what is wajib you can do, what is haram. All of those are legislation by Allah. So these are the limits set by Allah. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will be admitted by Him to gardens in paradise, under which rivers flow, abiding eternally therein. So you remain within its boundary, you try to solve your family wealth after you die, you sit with them, you have that conversation, you're willing to carry out this commandment of Allah. So whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will be admitted by Him to gardens under which rivers flow, abiding eternally therein, and that is a great attainment. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger, so people think, oh, I know what I have to do. You think you know what you have to do, and you don't care what Allah says. This is my wealth. I want to do it my way, and I don't care what the Sharia says. Whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger and transgress His limits, Allah's limits, He will put him into fire. May Allah save us from that. To abide eternally therein, and he will have a humiliating punishment. This is not simple verses that are connected to verses 11 and 12. So we have to be very careful with these verses. So when we look at the portions now, basically we have a half, we have a quarter, we have 1/8, and we have 2/3, we have 1/3, and we have 1/6. So these are the shares that we talked about in these verses 11, 12, and verse 176. These are all the shares there. So you see how we start to simplify it. It is not too complicated. And you give the people their portion first, so long as they have certain conditions fulfilled, they can get that portion. What remains, go to the nearest male relative. Um, and so you find that there are some inheritors, like some of your family members can receive only by fixed portions. Okay. Some, like your mother, she can only get by fixed portion. The wife, the husband, these can get only by fixed portion. And there are inheritors that can receive only through unfixed portions. That is, we haven't gone through all of them yet. We are coming to that. But they can get only through unfixed portion. And there are some who can receive both fixed and unfixed portion, like a father. Um, if you have a daughter, he gets 1/6, the daughter gets a half, and whatever remains goes back to the father because he's the nearest male relative. Okay. Now, there are three words that we use in the wealth that we have, and they are called hiba, wasiya, and irth. So, what is the difference between three? Hiba is a gift, wasiya is the will or the residually bequest. This is what you want, your desire is to do that. And by the way, talking about desire, a lot of people say, oh, my father desired that I get this house. Well, good luck to your father and good luck to you. If it is not in the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then if he says after I die you get this house, no, he can give you as a gift while he's alive. Okay. And earth is what you remain for your wealth. But people have a lot of wishes that they want to fulfill of their parents, or there's some relative. Oh, he wants this to happen to him when he dies, he wants this gold chain to go with him. Oh, I've heard too many stories about what people want when they die. Earth, so earth is what the property you have left. Okay, you call it earth. So your wealth that remain after you die is instruction from Allah how one's property is to be disposed of after one's death, and how is to be given away after one's death. So you can't do earth while you are alive and give away that. That will fall under something else. Wasiya is the legal declaration of the testator, that is the deceased person, with respect to his property which he desires to be carried out after his death, and it is limited to 1/3 of what remain. Residuary bequest mean whatever remain of his wealth after funeral expenses, hospital expenses, funeral expenses, debts repayment, then whatever you call it residually bequest, that whatever remain after that, up to 1/3. It's limited up to 1/3. So if somebody gets angry with his wife and children and said, I'm going to give away all my wealth when I die, and I put all my wealth to be given to whichever organization, or you cannot do that. No matter how angry you are with them, so long as you die, these are your children. And so long as you do not divorce each other, then you have to give them their share as directed by Allah. So wasiya can only go up to 1/3. Okay, and hiba is what a lot of people do in their lifetime. You have 4 or 5 property, and you say, "Look, I'm sick now. I can't maintain." So, son number one, you get this. Daughter number two, you get that. Son number three, you get that. You call it hiba. This is what you give while you are alive. It's a gift, and um, and hiba is something that you give to your children, or you can give anybody. You can give ICNA some of your money while you're alive, and so forth. So you can give while you're alive, whatever. This is your money. This is your um, free will while you're alive. But once you die, the wasiya is up to 1/3, and the earth is what goes to those relatives that we talked about, that Allah has given that. Now, there are some regulations. Um, I will not go through this with you because this is a little more. So those who can inherit, you have 15 male relatives that can inherit: a son, a grandson, which means a son's son, going down through male. So a son, 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 your great grandson through your son's side. Okay. Your origin will be your father, your grandfather, that is your father, father, and your father, father, father. So no mother, father here. So your mother, father do not inherit, but your father's father can inherit as a male progeny going up. Your brothers, you have a blood brother, same mother and same father, paternal brother, same father but different mothers, maternal brother, same mother but different fathers. You can draw a diagram and figure that out. In fact, I have one of each. So it was easy when I was going to. I have one blood brother, one paternal brother, one maternal brother. Brother's son. So only two of your brother's children can inherit. That is your blood brother's son going down through male and your paternal brother's son. That's your nephews from your blood brother or paternal brother. From your maternal brother, his sons do not inherit. Okay, and there are regulations for that. Uncles, your father blood brother, your father paternal brother. Number 12, your father's blood brother's son. So in other words, now you're going very far off your relatives. These are your cousins. Your father's blood brother, that's your uncle's son, who is your cousin through male alone, and your father's paternal brother, his son. So those are number 12 and 13. Nikah is husband, and manumission, this no longer exists. This is if you have a slave and you free that slave, and you're a male person that frees that slave, then you become the manumitter of that slave. So these are the 15 male inheritors. Remember, as you're coming away, apart from the husband, up to number 13 are blood relatives or relatives through the womb. Number 14 is through nikah. So this is a different category. So the further you go away from the deceased, the most likely you or your chances for inheritance will be less and less and less. Like ask yourself how many of your relatives die and you are their cousin, or you are their far relatives, and you are going to get something. Most likely they have relatives closer than you, they will get. Female, they will be your daughter, your granddaughter, that is your son's daughter going through male. So your son, daughter, your great granddaughter going through son. So daughter do not inherit, or daughter, son do not inherit. Origin, mother, maternal grandmother, and paternal grandmother. They are inheritors. Your sisters, the same thing with brothers. Three of them: blood sister, paternal sister, maternal sister. Nikah is wife or wives, and manumission if you have a female person that frees someone and they don't have anybody else, then she is an inheritor. So these are the laws that we can have the time so far, and I don't expect that you're going to ask detailed question, but we still have whatever questions you have. I'll be more than happy to answer them for clarification. Okay, so we are not going to deal with um, your individual scenario. Okay, so please go ahead and ask your questions.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Abdul Rahman. So you mentioned about the 1/3 that can be given to anyone you wish.
Yes.
What are some of the practices of the Sahaba that we can learn from about, where did they give this 1/3 to?
Well, they sometimes they give it to the Baitul Mal. They give it to other poor relatives who would not have normally inherited. So in today's time, you can use that. You can give it to Baitul Mal. Doesn't exist, not the organization Baitul Mal, but the um, the treasury of the Muslim community. So masajid can now be given to an organization. So in those times, they will give it to people who would be not recipient of any inheritance. So they can give to them. Poor people, they would give to, and so forth. Orphans, poor people. Remember, there were not too many rich Sahaba. There were some of them. Majority of them died um, barely making it. Yes.
Jazakallah khair. Um, in this country, sometimes some assets don't fall within the scope of the will. And one example here would be a husband and wife, they own their house together, and it's held in what's termed joint tenure with right on survival. So it automatically passes to the surviving spouse. Does that need to be considered as part of distribution in what we've been discussing here? Or is it okay for that to pass automatically to the spouse?
No, it is not correct to pass automatically for the spouse. If they own it jointly, then it means she has 50%, he has 50%. So if he dies, she has 50% share that belongs to her. And she will now be entitled to 1/8 of the other 50% if there are children, or a quarter of the next 50% if there is no children. So she can buy out that house if it is, let's say, if it is there are no children, she will have her half, which is joint share, and then the half of the man share. Because remember, wealth at the end of a person's life is everything he would have left behind, his wealth. Whether it's connected to somebody else, then you separate what belongs to him and it goes under those inheritance. So, in fact, if he doesn't have any children and they are joint owned, she will own 75% of that house anyhow. And the 25% she can buy over the house and pay for the other relatives who will be inheriting.
And what about assets that like retirement accounts that don't necessarily go directly into the estate? Is it the responsibility of the individual really to ensure provisions are in place for those to be distributed, even if they don't go part of the will process?
Yes. So in beneficiary, if you have 401k, for example, whatever money you put in, I don't know how it works fully, but it is what money you have put in. And if you die, my question is, do you get back all of that 401k, or you get a part of what you have paid for? Because
Yeah, I
retirement,
mean,
you withdraw that when you retire, isn't that so?
yeah, you may not have withdrawn it all before you die. So
Okay,
in
but
that
you have
situation,
right. So if you have the ability to withdraw that wealth, but you choose not to withdraw that wealth, correct? Then when you die, that becomes your wealth. That is part of your wealth that goes for inheritance.
okay, Jazakallah khair. And in terms of putting a will together, what advice do you have for people? How should they go about putting a will in place?
Yes. So obviously, America does not run on Sharia. So you can't go and open the Quran, chapter 4, verse 11, and say this is what happens. You die, you can die uh, intestate, which means you die without a will. And in that case, they are different state. Most states have the law that the wife gets majority of the money, not all of the money, but majority of the money. And so it is always better to die leaving a will. So there are Muslim or even non-Muslim attorneys now. They are very well aware of Islamic inheritance, and you can tell them that if I am to die, this is how my wealth is to be distributed, and you take, from someone who is knowledgeable of Islamic inheritance. They can give you just like those figures that I give you. It's not too difficult. They can give you the portion, and the lawyer can write that. Their online um, access, their online services, their Muslim lawyers in pretty much every state that can help you, that you can set your will according to the Sharia.
Jazakallah khair.
But if you die, the thing is, if you die without leaving a will in America, the court decides who gets what.
Yeah, so this will be the last question. So in the case where, let's say, you have a parent that's died, no will was in place, what is the responsibility of the children in that situation? Just to follow the intestacy rules, or should they try to follow things by Sharia?
Yeah, if for example they die in intestate, and the court will give different people different amount, it is not the Islamic ruling. Their responsibility. So that's scenario one. It is their responsibility, if they really believe in Allah on the last day, to come together and redistribute it after they get it from the court. That, you know what, I'm really not entitled to this money. You are entitled to this money, or I'm entitled to so much, and the rest should go that. Now, this calls for a tremendous taqwa, because what I've seen, even families with taqwa fight for every penny. Okay, they fight when you see the parents die or somebody dies. It becomes out of control because they have not put these things in place. So that is the first case scenario. The second case scenario, if he dies in his will, then everybody should follow the Islamic Sharia, and because he would have that in his will, that when I die, so much goes to that one goes to that, and nobody should fight in the court for what doesn't belong to them. So the problem becomes if he dies intestate. In other words, he dies without a will, then the probate court will decide based on the state law, not the Islamic law. You can't take Quran and take it to them. They will not listen to that. The state will have a law that says so much percent the wife, and it varies from state to state. So the wife will get so much, and she will get 50% of what remains of that, and so forth. She doesn't get all, but she gets the bulk of that. And I would say that's why I'm glad this conversation is happening. And hopefully one of these days we can have a much bigger, discussion on this issue of inheritance. Maybe we can have an attorney coming in. I've done that before. So I give some of the Islamic parts, an attorney comes in, he does the legal side, and it's very simple. It's not complicated. Once we are willing to follow Allah and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ruling, there are ways and means in America how you can do that.
Jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq to really put these practices in our lives and make the provisions before we die. With that, we'll end. We'll continue with the study of Surah An-Nisaa, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, next Wednesday. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat, wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Sadaqallahu azim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahu Akbar.